Howdy, folks, and welcome to this special interview. Today, we are talking about Lost in Random, a new dark fantasy adventure game from Zoink Games, the folks that have brought you Fee, as well as Ghost Giant, Flipping Death, and many, many others. And it is a huge pleasure to be joined by you folks. I'm a big fan of y'all. Olov, our game director, and Klaus, the head of development at Zoink. Good evening. How are you folks?
Good evening.
So great. Good evening.
We're great. Excellent.
Yeah. How are you?
Of course. I'm doing very well. I'm kind of like, admittedly, I won't beat around the bush. I'm a smidge nervous. I like you folks. I like your games. I'm a big fan of Ghost Giant. It was one of has been one of the first really tiptoeing into VR, and that was one of the first ones I wanted to get into. Which, Olov, you were the game and art director for, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I had a lot of fun with that, and actually it was my very first VR game project as well. And Klaus's too. It was the whole studio's first VR project, so it was a great way to learn and do something weird and different. I think because we didn't have much, knowledge about it, and that's when fun things can happen, I think.
We'll get into that because I have a tremendous amount of admiration for your guys' ability to seemingly not repeat yourselves. But before we get into that, let's talk about Lost in Random, the new game that you folks have been working on. Let's begin with, what is it? It's not out. We have only a few glimpses of it, but give me the pitch.
So it's an action-adventure game about a girl called Even and her living dice companion, Dicey. And it's set in this, of course, dark fairy tale world, as you know, called Random, where everybody's destiny is decided by the roll of this evil queen's dark dice. And Even and Dicey are there to kind of stir the pot and break these weird systems that the queen has put into place throughout the world.
I have to ask, is there a studio philosophy that you folks may have of some kind in changing art direction and style? Because at this point, it really hasn't felt as though Zoink has done the same game twice in any capacity. And now with Lost in Random, it looks much, much more grand. It seems to be one of the biggest games you guys have put together. Studio philosophy, is that intentional?
Yeah, I do think there's some philosophy. You have to think about Zoink is a company that I started out as a pixel artist many years ago, and then became an artist, and then making games. And then when I started Zoink, it was really I just needed to have a platform to make games, and it was just a fun place to make games, And as an artist or as something to create somebody, it's always it's just a really fun journey when you start out a new project that you try something else. If you've done it before, it feels a little bit like you're going to the same place again, And it's just a really fun personal journey to, okay, let's try this instead. Oh, couldn't this be fun to try? And I think every time we've done something new, there's always been sort of a reason to it. When we did Stick It to Man and Flipping Death, we were trying to find a place where we could do games, quite big story with very simple means, basically. When we did Faye, it was about how can we do 3D games, exploration games in 3D, but with a very, also quite a low budget in some ways, and a simple style. The budget, in a way, also dictated that we needed to have a style that was just really cool for the amount of money we could build the game on. But then for Lost in Random, it was really okay, now we can finally do the big thing, And it was more if we want to do something that almost looks AAA or sort of looking very realistic, how can we do that with a style, that's interesting, not just doing realism. So we thought why don't we do small, almost puppet style realism in a way? It looks a little bit like stop motion in some ways,
No, that absolutely does. Olaf, for you as you as a creative and very focused in art, what is that like for you to be able to transition into different art styles and now in going to Lost in Random, which as Klaus had mentioned has a much more AAA aesthetic, a much grander, bigger aesthetic.
Yeah, like Klaus mentioned, Zoink has always been a more art-driven studio from the get-go, and I mean, as also Klaus touched on, since the budget has been limited, it's always about idea and style before really huge AAA realistic games, and that's been really inspiring to me. And it's been really inspiring working with Klaus. I learned so much from him, just his idea process, and sitting with a really weird, wonky idea that you haven't seen before, and be really? Maybe. Okay. And then it grows on you, and like, yeah, of course, a dice should have 2 legs and arms, and let's make a game about that. So my idea process has developed a lot working with Klaus, and also working on Ghost Giant. We came out of that project having, of course, it has a darker undertone, of course, as people know who have actually played Ghost Giant. But on the surface, it's very bright and colorful and vivid and cute. So we had all built up this longing to make a little something more darker, like we'll often say, and this longing to now with this proper budget explore fantasy and an epic story on a scale that we haven't been able to before, like Klaus already mentioned. For me, it's always about just like with Klaus, I love to start with drawings and story, because everything is storytelling, and things easily grow out of a story. And when we found this iconic picture of a girl and her dice, that's when things really started to happen, and the story started to grow out of it. And of course, it begs for interesting gameplay. You take a dice, the most iconic gameplay icon, and make it your own. It has to be damn good gameplay. So that's been a real challenge, but also very natural. It takes you for a journey and pulls you along, and can't help but tell a great story with it, I feel. So we're really proud and excited to show everybody what we've come up with.
I think I could probably talk to both of you about the creative and art process till the ends of the earth. Truly. But I do kind of want to shift into something you both have kind of touched on, especially you, Klaus, about the studio starting, with you as the small thing, pixel art, and then moving as a platform to make creative games. Has there been any interesting challenges, should I say, from going from smaller budget games to now this big budgeted game, and kind of what that process has been like, applying creative artistic integrity to now a bigger scope in terms of budget?
I mean, it's always those boring things about going bigger, is basically like structure. You need a lot more structure, you need more producers handling everything. There's all that stuff that comes sort of, it's obviously that it's harder to run a bigger team, that's just how it is, I think some of the challenges you really run into quite quickly is that once you have a bigger team, you really need to have a really strong vision of what you want to do, which I think is great about Olov. To give you some love back here, Olov, is basically have somebody who's really good at telling what the vision is to the team, and making sure that they really understand this is what we're doing right now, this is where we're going forward. I think we are running the games a little bit similar to, I guess, how movies are run, that there's a movie director who really leads it, and has a vision for it and goes forward with that and says, this is what we're doing, There's so many decisions you have to make on your way as you make a game. And, this thing could be blue, it could be red, it could be, both could be quite good, But the way that person wants to take the decision is probably the best. That's a really good choice. And he has to follow that road all the way, to make sure that actually becomes really great in that direction. The challenge has really been to make sure that everybody gets it. Everybody follows it and understands what we're doing right now, and everybody is going in the same direction. But I also think sometimes when you have an idea, like I felt directly, like with Lost in Random, and the idea with the dice and all that stuff is, it's so, like Olov said, it's just such a strong subject that once we had that, it was like, it's very easy to create something around it, because it's so almost like you win the lottery something. Wow, that's a great idea. Let's keep it. That's a great idea. Just go with that. You're so happy you found it. It's like you're digging in your brain and then suddenly this thing comes out, and it's like, that's really cool.
Yeah, and I remember early on when we had our smaller studio, we had just started out with prototyping Lost in Random. I felt like we were all just like little kids going on lunch break and like, I'm not sure what we're trying. Like, what do you think about randomness? I don't know. What do you think about? Well, let's just see what this idea thinks. Oh, idea, you want to go over there, and you want to. Okay. Like, it feels like we started out a bit unsure with this big blank slate, and who are we to tell this story about such a general topic like randomness? But in a way, it kind of told itself, and because everybody has a relation to randomness and uncertainty in life, and so. We just had a group of like 5-6 people sitting together, and everything just grew very naturally out of it, and that was so much fun. Just it's the funnest project I've worked on.
Olov, I think that's something that really stands out to me is this. I've only gotten to understand bits and pieces of how you guys work in a creative process. But one thing you guys, like both of you mentioned, is kind of finding or uncovering an idea. And I kind of love the fact that it's called Lost in Random, and you refer to it almost as like you're chasing these ideas that are kind of just maybe developing on their own or going in their own way. And like, who are you to stop those ideas from going? Was that always kind of a reciprocal thing from the start, when thinking of Lost in Random, or was it just something you uncovered along the process?
I think it was definitely something we uncovered since, like we touched on already, we started out with just wanting to tell a fairy tale, a dark fairy tale, and we looked at artwork by Sean Tan, that's, for instance, an Australian artist. That was, his art is so, just is what it is. It leaves so much to the imagination. It's very dreamlike, and it has a child's imagination. And we and also like Miyazaki films, and Over the Garden Wall, we looked at all of these different fairy tales that are just very matter-of-factly, and potatoes and molasses. We just looked at all these different fairy tales that just are what they are, and they don't need much explanation. And we wanted to tell that kind of story, and then all these systems and themes snuck in, but we still want that kind of dreamy fairy tale feel.
Well, Olov, Klaus, unfortunately, this is all the time we have, as though I can speak to you folks probably for hours and hours more, but just know that I'm very excited for this, and it has been a huge honor to be able to spend just even a glimpse of time with you both to talk about Lost in Random. But before we go, when can we expect the game this year?
Yeah, you can definitely expect the game this year. It's coming soon. I'll tell you that, and it's coming this year. That's for sure. Yeah, and on all platforms. So I will get into details exactly platforms, but all of them.
Okay, well, absolutely amazing, Olov. Thank you so much, Klaus. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be on the lookout for Lost in Random. I'm Kurt one last time. Thanks again, folks. See you later.